Richard Matheson, one of the greatest horror and fantasy writers of all time, is dead. And yet, he has left behind such a great body of works with short stories, screenplays, novels, and he's going to be largely felt by the imagination of other people who will read him, who will watch his screenplays on television or in movies. So this is a tribute video I'm going to do for Matheson, and I'm going to talk about some of his works, and I'm going to talk to other people who will be able to contribute their ideas and suggestions and thoughts about this very prolific author. What is he? Well, that's a good question. People may not know him by his name, but they'll certainly know his works.
I definitely learned of Richard Matheson at a young age through Twilight Zone, like a lot of people probably did, and I think the thing for me, and I think this is a common thing for Richard Matheson, is I obviously didn't know who he was when I was watching those episodes when I was younger, because my dad watched Twilight Zone, and he would watch Duel and Star Trek, which Matheson also wrote Duel, and then an episode or two of Star Trek. So it wasn't until later on in life that I actually realized I was really familiar with Matheson's work. And I think that's kind of the thing about him, is he's influenced both horror and sci-fi so much, but people don't know his name like they know Stephen King, for example. And I think Matheson had a huge impact on the genre and still does to this day. And then when I was in high school, I read I Am Legend, which to this day is still my favorite book of all time. I love I Am Legend. You know, I think I saw Last Man on Earth prior to reading I Am Legend, and then finding out about it that Matheson wrote the screenplay for that, but then changed the ending for copyright reasons and stuff like that. But just the way that he was always able to kind of have this sense of dread and impending doom in his books, or in his stories, even though they were really character-based, is something that I always really liked about him, is that it focused on the character, but yet you got to feel for that character and kind of know the environment that they're in, and the horror that came out of that. So, like I said, to this day, I Am Legend is still my favorite book of all time, and he definitely does inspire the writing that I've done. I've actually been loosely working on a screenplay that's heavily influenced by I Am Legend, so he definitely does inspire what I do, and I hope that people just still continue to check out his works. And I think, considering everything that he's done, it's going to be hard for people not to know about him. But just like the last words of the book, Richard Matheson is legend.
I think it's quite rude that Richard Matheson passed away just before he was going to get the Visionary Award at the Saturn Awards. That's rude of him, but it's very sad. I mean, he was a fantasy writer, like you were saying, fantasy, sci-fi, horror, terror at 20,000 feet or 35,000 feet, whatever that awesome episode with Shatner.
Nightmare at 20,000 feet.
20,000 something like, yeah. I can never remember the title. I just remember loving it. Also loved the film version of that as well. That was with who was in that?
John Lithgow.
John Lithgow did an awesome job in that as well. But Trilogy of Terror is probably my favorite. That was a good movie. He wrote all 3 segments in that.
Cool. That would be like your favorite work by Richard Matheson.
Yeah. More than Legend of Hell House. I mean, Duel was great too. But yeah, Trilogy of Terror definitely my favorite.
Just give you an idea of how influential he was. Like this book, I Am Legend, for example, was made into 3 different adaptations. First one was with Vincent Price, Last Man on Earth, and then it was remade with Charlton Heston in the 1970s, And then it was remade once again with Will Smith. That was the most recent version, which they changed the ending completely, thus changing the very essence of the book. But if you get a chance to read this book, do so. I think it's well worth the read. I would recommend it. But I wanted to tell you what my favorite work by Richard Matheson is. It would definitely be the two TV movies of The Night Stalker. He wrote the screenplay for the first one, The Night Stalker, and then the second one, The Night Strangler. And his writing, the dialogue is so very sharp. It's so much atmosphere and mood in it. He really understood how to use horror that's somehow out of the spotlight. It remains in the shadows. The Night Stalker TV movies did that so well. When the Night Stalker TV series came around, they didn't use Richard Matheson for a scriptwriter, and that series sorely needed his writing skills because it wasn't quite as good as the TV movies were.
Richard Matheson passed away a little over a week ago, I think, at this point. And my thoughts on the writer is I thought he was a fantastic writer. He really brought a new level of horror and story plotting that was starting to be lacking a little bit in the 60s and 70s throughout all the times he wrote. He was able to redefine a lot of what he did. I'd say in that time period with him and Philip K. Dick and probably a couple other ones that aren't coming to mind at this moment, they really were able to revolutionize a lot of old tropes that got new fresh life. Obviously, Matheson is probably best known for I Am Legend. So, retelling a vampire tale in such a strong and an innovative way was really good. I mean, we needed it, honestly, at that time of writing. It started to kind of get stale, that kind of thing. As I'm sure other people have already mentioned in this video, besides that, there's also the Twilight Zone's 20,000 feet, or Nightmare at 20,000 feet, and again, a fantastic suspense story, very well done. I'd say overall, I know this is probably on the trite side a bit, but I would have to say I Am Legend is probably my favorite work that he did. Being able to pull a psychological twist to an otherwise normal, I'd say normal, but to an otherwise vampire story or zombie story at the same time. It was a unique creature blend, I guess, if you want to describe it that way. Which, when they did the movie Last Man on Earth, they brought that very strongly to the role. Vincent Price did a great job of showing the mental degradation that was starting to take over him, take over his own mind, which was, again, reflected very well from the original story. So, I'd say that Matheson will probably be greatly missed, and I hope that that everybody continues to read his work well into the future. So, thank you.
It is no exaggeration to say that Richard Matheson was a great influence to many writers, directors, and creative artists. The list is endless. For example, Stephen King has often mentioned that he was influenced by Matheson. Matheson was always the grandfather of horror fiction. There are directors like George Romero or Edgar Wright who mentioned that he was very inspirational. There was also the X-Files creator, Chris Carter, who was influenced by Matheson. He was often said in many of his interviews that his X-Files was inspired by the original TV movies of The Night Stalker. And so again, the list, you can just go on and on. And the influence can be found in horror fiction, fantasy, and science fiction. Richard Matheson was a literary giant. His large amounts of works will be felt for many years to come. He took an especially intellectual approach in horror fiction. He understood what controlled our fears and what frightened us the most. He understood the theater of the mind. His books such as I Am Legend and The Incredible Shrinking Man delve into that psychological aspect of horror, which I've always enjoyed, and I think a lot of other people did too. So with that, thank you, Richard Matheson. Thank you for leaving behind so many great works for us to cherish and enjoy. You're going to be greatly missed by so many.